You know, I've been actually looking forward to sitting down with Days Gone Remastered on my PlayStation 5 Pro, and now that I've spent a good chunk of time with it, I feel that after finishing it once again on the remaster and yet also experiencing all of the features and additions that it has to offer, I don't feel that this remaster is justified in terms of it being even called a remaster. I will get into that. I want to get into the conversation, but first of all, I will not bore you with the rehashing of an entire premise, what this game is all about. Look, this game came out in 2019 on PlayStation 4. You know who Deaconess St. John is, you know about the freakers and the camps, you know now that you spend most of your time riding dirt roads on a motorcycle. Instead, I want to dive straight into what's new, what's better, and what's exactly, well, pretty much the damn same. Because again, there are still a lot of issues here that are present, even though I feel like they should have been rectified already at this point, even calling this game a remaster. And yet I don't know what happened there, but it doesn't seem like it was. Nevertheless, let's get into it. So, first of all, this remaster looks cleaner than before, in some ways at least. Improved lighting adds a subtle glow to dusk drivers that kind of makes the campfires feel extra cozy. You know, shadows stretch more naturally across the forests, and a draw distances let you spot freakers' hordes creeping along the distance ridgelines. Now, if you switch into the performance mode like I did, you get a 1440p aiming for that rock solid 60 FPS. Everything just feels smooth. No more frame drops when hundreds of zombies swarms around your bike. And also the quality mode doesn't exactly hit 60 FPS, but at 4K it still has kind of like holds a steady enough to admire every leaf fluttering in the wind, so it looks gorgeous. And of course on my PlayStation 5 Pro, there's even an enhanced mode at 1584p, upscaled to 4K, and also it is indeed a 60 FPS. And the difference is, well, subtle, but at least some way noticeable. Of course, like mentioned, we're talking about Pro version, so it's gonna have finer textures on Deacon's leather jacket, better reflections on puddles, and crisper vistas on that ruined Oregon countryside. In plain terms, it's a lot more prettier, I want to say, than it was on a PlayStation 4 version. Now, of course, if you haven't switched to the DualSense yet, I feel like you could be missing out. You know, haptic feedback is surprisingly nuanced, and your grips vibrate differently when you ride over the gravel versus the dirt, of course. Adaptive triggers gives the throttle a little resistance as you twist for speed, and when you're firing a semi-automatic rifle, the trigger pull feels a little heavier than your pistols. You know, these are small things, but I feel like that kind of gives extra towards your immersion of playing this game. Now, one thing that definitely would justify this being a remaster and paying an additional $10, of course, if you have already purchased this game on your PlayStation 4 version, Horde Assault, first of all. Now, it basically ramps up the size and ferocity of enemy groups, so if you like shooting dozens of freakers before, now you'll face even bigger, tougher packs. And you'll need to get creative with traps and tactics. There's a big problem with it, of course, as well, that it kind of gets repetitive. And I kind of got bored of it relatively quickly. And there's also a permadeath mode, basically cranks up the tension by deleting your save if you, well, die at any point. It genuinely is a thrilling challenge, but for the folks who want every choice to count, obviously it will be quite difficult. Again, you'll need to know what you're doing, play the game, memorize. It is a little bit of a commitment. Then there's also, of course, a speedrun mode, basically just strips down your gears, sets timers, and dares you to finish the main story as fast as possible. And as such, I can see a lot of people who could get into this version of the mode as well. Now, all these keep the core game intact while offering fresh objectives. They're not like life-changing, but they give you a reason to dive back in after that 60 plus hours you probably poured into the original, depends if you got the Platinum Trophy included. Now, regarding the Platinum Trophy, yes, I got the Platinum Trophy on Days Gone, the PS4 version, and now I've got that Platinum Trophy once again for the Remaster version. And Bend Studio added several accessibility options that makes quite an interesting difference. As an example, high contrast mode turns those something just hard to see UI elements into bright, bold shapes, handy if you have kind of like a vision challenges. And actually, I don't have any vision challenges, but I've still found this mode very useful, and I did turn it on. And then this game speed slider just basically lets you dial down the action by 10 to 50%, slowing combat and driving to match your reaction time. This definitely is a very nice accessibility feature. I didn't touch it since, well, I felt like I wanted to experience the game as it was. Then there's also menu narration. Basically anything you see as a text can read out to you, so you don't actually have to stare at every single little thing and read for yourself. But again, I always keep this off. Audio radar cues for the collectibles, making it easy to track down parts and supplies without pausing to watch the map. Now, this would have been useful if I would have been chasing those collectibles for the platinum trophy, but since I already got the platinum, I did not end up turning it on. In fact, I kind of got a little sick of it because I turned it on thinking that, okay, this could be useful for supplies that I should be picking up every time whenever there's an opportunity, but then I noticed how often this noise kept on popping up. It kind of got irritating, and I just turned it off. Now, these tweaks don't just help people with specific needs, they also make the world feel a little less, well, how should I say, frustrating. Now, when you're juggling freaker swarms, ammo shortages, and a bleak storyline all at once, obviously these things can really help in terms of accessibility. Now, I already kind of little touched on it. If you already own the Days Gone on PS4, upgrading it is a breeze and won't cost you much, just a small fee. Better yet, you can carry your save data over to this remaster, so all of those side quests, hidden stashes, and customized bikes you spend hours on, basically they can get all transferred over, and yes, including, like already mentioned, the trophies. And that's what I pretty much did as well. Like, I popped the trophy, got that platinum, but then I still wanted to go and replay the game. I did it on the new Game Plus mode, including that I actually have finished this game on a survival difficulty. I think it is called the Survival 2 difficulty. And mind you, I want to actually say a quick thing regarding the survival difficulty. It's actually not that hard. It really isn't. Especially, but it's important to clarify, in the new Game Plus, because you get to keep all your weapons. And when you do so, and all the upgrades are there, yeah, it's a breeze. Now, with all that said, there are some things that haven't changed. And if they annoyed you back then, unfortunately, they will bug you here as well. So the main storyline and side missions are pretty much untouched in every single way, which means the pacing still wonders. Earlier on, you rush tracking down Sarah, only to detour throughout the dozens of camps with fetch quests that just don't always feel meaningful. As an example, there's one moment that you hate this one of the groups, and then you're going at the next mission, like right after, you're going on a deer hunting. It makes no sense. There's so many of these awkward moments within this game, and unfortunately it has not been addressed. Now, dialogues can be stiff as well. Some lines land, but others feel forced or overly dramatic, especially Deacon. He's constantly, well, angry, sarcastic, to the point that's just like he's overdoing it. It doesn't feel very humane, if that makes sense. Now, you might still find yourself zoning out during the cutscenes, wishing the plot pushed you forward instead of pausing for yet another side mission about clearing a nest of freakers or hunting down some lost guy. Now, because this is a new Game Plus I've been playing, I completely ignored all the side objectives and side activities because, look, I am not gonna go through that again since I already got that platinum. And the biggest main offender I feel that this game has that has not been addressed in the remaster, it is the awkward and very odd transitions. Anytime when there's a cutscene, it goes to black. Then afterwards it goes to the gameplay. And same thing does it from the gameplay, goes to black, and then kind of fades in, fades out into the cutscene. It's very, very outdated design. I feel that it should not, some ways they should have actually cleaned this up, but again, it doesn't seem like they did much of job in terms of fixing some of these issues that are quite obvious. It's just, there's so many things that are odd that has not been touched about this game, and very concerning, mind you, like calling this a remaster. Now, clear camp, defend outposts, rescue survivors, repeat, is still that backbone of the game, and it still remains just as repetitive as ever. Yes, the world is big and open, and there are random environmental touches, but the goal rarely changes. After a while, you'll find yourself grumbling. It just doesn't feel like a purposeful progression, so much so as the series of checkboxes to tick before the next story beat appears. And most of the launch day bugs have been ironed out on the PlayStation 4 over the years, and those fixes are in the remaster. But some new glitches did creep in, largely in the fresh modes. I saw a supply box that just refuses to open on Horde Assault, and once the game froze right as I downed a huge pack of Reekers. Sometimes I hadn't seen it in the base game even. They aren't deal breakers, but they are the reminders that just why is this keep on happening in terms of even this being a remaster. It's very odd decision making. And again, I'm sure a lot of you may feel very, well, not good about this, but yes, this remaster does not include extra content in terms of the story or even side activities. And it is unfortunate. We did know that it would not get, and I still feel like there could have been an opportunity of adding few things, changing few things, but again, I think it would have been nice to include something, but well, in their decision it seems like they didn't. They decided not to do it. You know, if you enjoyed the world, the motorcycles, and Deacon's rugged charm, you'll find plenty to like here. The remaster makes your favorite moments feel sharper and more immersive, and the new modes give you a reason to pick the game back up. Now, if you of course ever touch Days Gone on PS4, this is a kind of a more or less of a definitive way to play. It runs more smoothly, yes, looks better, yes, and you get all the patches and quality of life updates in one package. Just know that the pacing and missions variety hasn't changed, so you might still find yourself wishing for a tighter story. Permadeath and a Horde Assault are tailor-made for the folks who love a hardcore twist, so it makes the little things a bit more challenging. The new options really open up to the game to more players, right? If you often skip action titles because of the pace just being too quick, check out that speed settings. Now, if you struggle with visuals, turn on that contrast mode. It really helps. The accessibility is very good in this game. You know, playing Days Gone Remastered on my PS5 Pro, it felt a bit like visiting an old friend's new apartment. The place is shinier, feels more modern, and has new rooms to explore, but the layout is just the same as I remember. The motorcycle still handles the same way, the freakers still swarm in inopportune moments, and Deacon still has the same witty, but just sometimes wobbly banter. I love Days Gone on PS4, and the remaster reminds me why I fell for it in the first place. That sense of being just one more traveler trying to survive a broken world with only your wits, your bike, and a handful of bullets. But I'm not gonna deny that to say that this has been an entirely excellent experience for me. Unfortunately, it has not. In fact, I'll argue and say that I feel it actually opened up some of the things I forgot about Days Gone initially back in 2019. Instead, I feel like this game is not as good as I remember, and it kinda soured my experience a little bit. I still like my time with it, to put in my time, play the game, fully experience it all over again, but I'm noticing a lot more cracks than I initially did. I'm not sure if that's just a remaster, or perhaps that was already there during the PlayStation 4 era, 2019 version of the game, but it's not very good in terms of why I'm seeing it now. It's kind of scary thought now, because like, a lot of people out there are saying they want Days Gone 2. They want to see this happen. I initially felt the same way. I wanted to see Days Gone 2, but now, after everything that I went through, and all the news and coverages that we have heard regarding Ben's studio, the layoffs, people leaving, and the game having so many problems in terms of its development, I'm gonna argue and say maybe it's the right time to leave it here. I think it might be a good time to, well, leave it as a memory, and a little bit of a nostalgia as well. At the end of the day, Days Gone Remastered still is the best way to play the game in 2025. Especially if you care about frame rates, better visuals, a few new challenges. And like I already touched on, if you already own a PS4 version and loved it, upgrading it is no brainer. If you never tried it, this is perhaps your chance to see what all the fuss is all about. Just kind of be ready for a long, familiar ride throughout the Freaker Investor roads. At that, thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe. See you guys all, and have a wonderful day.